welcome to Centerpoint Church. My name is actually Aaron, but it's not the morning and it's not a church service. What this is actually is, so this is our first ever Centerpoint Voices. And what that is all about is, normally on Sundays you hear from me, and I think there are so many people that are a part of this church that have really great voices, and not just singing voices, but voices on topics that I think are very prevalent and important. And we're going to see different topics each quarter or so, and people will be talking about something that maybe has impacted their life or they have experience with. So this topic happens to be marriage, and I'm guessing lots of you have experience with marriage, but we have some people that have gone through trials and who have done some counseling and all that type of thing, and they're going to be sharing some of how faith has impacted their marriage tonight. So that just happens to be the topic for this session. Next session is all on creativity, so I'm excited about that one coming up in a few months. But how the format of tonight will work is I'm going to have Janette Stone come on up in a second here. You can start making your way on up. She's going to do a 15-minute talk on marriage. And she has been a counselor how long now, Janette? 40 years, all right? So let's just clap for that. I feel like that's like necessary or something. Yeah. So that's amazing. But she's just going to share some of her wisdom of what she's learned about marriages and how you get to know your spouse in that process, because that was something very important to her. So she's going to share on that for 15 minutes. Now, Janette and I have been laughing all week preparing for this because I'm going to cut her off after 15 minutes. So I'm going to flag her down. I'm going to set a timer. Yeah, you're going to see me rushing the stage because I want to be conscious of your time and make sure that you are out of here within the hour. So Janette's going to speak for about 15 minutes. We'll take about a 1 or 2 minute break. Tim and Chris DeMaster will come up. They're going to share on alignment. And then finally, at the end, there'll be a panel where Jason and Jeri will join Janette and Tim and Chris. And at any point throughout this time, you can write on that index card a question if you'd like to ask the panel. Otherwise, I have some really great questions too. There's some bins up here in the front, and we'll put some bins in the back. You can drop it off at any transition point. Again, we're always real and relevant here at Centerpoint, so feel free to submit anything pertaining to this topic, but we would love to discuss different things with you, and I think the panel's ready for it. So without further ado, let's hear it for Janette Stone. I think you're on. Yep.
Well, thank you for coming. Yes, I'm Janette Stone, and I have been counseling forever, it seems like, 40 years. It's the most exciting part of my life, really, because it's so different. Every time anyone walks in, it's a unique story. And we're going to be talking about marriages tonight, and it's the most important, to me, the most important thing we do other than when we accept Jesus. Who you marry is the most important thing, and that every marriage is different. As my relationship with Bill Stone, my husband, 58 years, by the way, another clap. It's different than your marriage is going to be because you are different people. And every person is unique and different. So whatever I might do is going to be different than what you do. And so my marriage is different than yours. What has happened, though, with us, with marriages, we will look at other people's marriages and think, oh, they're doing it this way, and we're not. We begin to compare. And whenever we compare, we're going to wind up either jealous, because it's not going to be the same, or we're going to wind up thinking we do it better than the other person does. But no, we can't compare our marriage with your marriage. It's different because it's two different people. And the reason we're each different is we're each born with a different temperament, and we're born with it. By the way, we are born with our temperament, our personality. And if you've had children, you know even when they were small, you could tell a difference with them. We have 3 sons, and they were each, of course, different from birth. And so we each have different temperaments that we're born with. We never change our temperament. What happens, though, we do begin to learn how to use our temperament differently the older we get. So we might think our temperament has changed, but it hasn't. And so you married somebody. You gave this person permission, by the way, to interrupt any part of your life at any time. That one person can interrupt anything you're doing, any goal you might think you have, to put themselves in your path. And that's what marriage is. And that's what we have to be ready for. We can't compare ourselves with other people, I said, and we can't compare ourselves with how other people handle that. We each are different because we have different temperaments. And so we marry this person, and of course we marry a person because usually they're pretty hot and we're attracted to them. And then we're with them maybe for about a year, and we think, I married a complete stranger. Who is this person? Why does he constantly or she constantly do whatever we think they shouldn't be doing? It's because they have a different temperament than us. And I think that we have to learn, and what I see in my counseling more than any other thing with marriage, is they do not know who they are married to. They do not know that other person. They do not know what they like to do, what is comfortable for them, what is their nature, in a way that they need to know to receive that person. I said that we've given people permission to interrupt our life at any time when we marry them. Bill Stone has interrupted my life for 58 years. And I have to be willing for that. We are willing for that, by the way, with a friend. The phone will call. We'll put down what we're doing and answer the phone and be very congenial with that person. Much more congenial than we will be with our spouse. And I say to people, if you only have so much nice, you have a vat of niceness, and you only have so much of it, use most of it for your spouse. Give me what's left over. I'm not that important in your life. Your person that you're married to is. To be able to be congenial to this strange person that you have married to. Our temperaments, we're born with them. Not going to change. Your spouse is not going to change. Now, they can change, of course, how they use it. There are different temperaments that we have, and I, just because of who I am, different than Bill Stone, who's a detail person, I am not. I have really 4 different temperaments that I use in my counseling. Very simple. Sanguine. A sanguine person likes people. I'm a sanguine. We tend as sanguines to forget things because we're people at the moment. I'm right here right now. I really don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'll have to look at my calendar. Bill Stone does know. He's a detail person. A cleric has a goal and they will go toward it. And their downside is they can get angry if you get in their way. A melancholy person is usually very creative, and maybe Aaron is going to talk about that somewhat the next time with creativity. Usually they're very creative. A phlegmatic person is usually very calm, very stable person. And you can be a mixture of those temperaments. How can you find out who you're married to? Wouldn't it be kind of a fun activity for you to sit down with your spouse and kind of discuss it? Who do you think I am? Who do you think you are? And see what you come up with? It would be wonderful. Well, no wonder, you will say. No wonder you keep notes all the time about what you're going to do tomorrow, because you're a cleric. Oh, no wonder you forget everything, Janette, because you're a sanguine. See, to be able to understand each other. There is nothing to me more important in my marriage and in marriages that I see counseling than to be understood. And how often I will hear people say, he doesn't understand me. She doesn't understand me. The way that we can be understood, though, is to show that person who we are and to be able to tell what we like, what we don't like, and oftentimes we think we are being good spouses if we don't do that. If we say to someone, I had recently someone who had been going spurgeon fishing for a decade, thinking she was being a good wife. She hated spurgeon fishing. And instead of saying to her husband, I really don't like being wet, I don't like wind, and I don't like wet, but I will go with you to be with you. You see the difference? And instead of saying, oh, I just love this, yes, let's do it together, or the male counterpart, to be able to say, I truly do not really like maybe going shopping, but I'll go shopping with you if you want me to. Do you see that? To be honest, to be truth-speaking, tells that person who you are, so the spouse knows who you are. Another important part of really marriage is, hi Aaron, I'm looking at the time, is the place that we are in our family. I'm a youngest. I love being a youngest, by the way. It's wonderful. There are no rules. I have more speeding tickets than anyone else in my family, by the way. The youngest is much different than the oldest, or an only child, or a middle child. An oldest child really does follow the rules, feels disappointed if he doesn't. I never feel disappointed if I don't follow a rule. I won't be disappointed if I talk longer than 15 minutes. That's the way that goes. The middle child is usually the peacemaker. And those are such general things. But to be able to talk about that, to know the place in the family that your spouse had, it plays a difference. To know what their gift is. Everybody, once you accept Christ, I hope some of you have that are sitting here, and accepting Christ, of course, is the number one thing, really important. It shows how I rule my life. The gift that I have affects me. I have the gift of teaching. And so I'm always going to be teaching, no matter if I'm counseling, no matter if I'm speaking. All of that is going to make a difference in how I rule my life. And your gift, you all have one, by the way. That's going to affect how you are as a person. How wonderful it is to know who you're married to so you don't judge them. And you will know that you are judging if you say out loud, maybe, or to yourself, well, I would never do that. You're judging. Or, I've never seen that done that way before. All of these judgment statements means you're judging them. You are not the authority on how the other person should be, especially your spouse. Usually, opposites attract each other. My husband has what I do not have. I have what he does not have. And that makes a complete balanced family. And what I will find in families, when I work with the whole family, is families are always balanced. If you have one way, I'm going to find who is the opposite of that in that family. And to be able to accept that. One of you probably like one thing, the other thing. To be able to be honest, as I said before, about fishing or whatever it might be, and say, that's not really my thing, but I'll do it with you, sweetheart. Another thing I find with, am I done? 2 minutes. Thing I find out, I'll talk real fast, is that people are more, as I mentioned before, are more congenial with people outside. To be able to have in your family, in your house, this is my house, and so in my house, there's going to be good manners. In my house, we're going to say please, we're going to say thank you, we're going to use all of the good manners that you know about. It's not a hard thing, but it changes the climate of the whole home. Do you see that happening? Now, I have 3 sons, 6 grandsons, 2 granddaughters. Thank you, dear Father. And when they walk in the grandma's house, I hear a lot of thank yous, please, just good manners. And so if you think of nothing else tonight, if there's the only one thing you can hang on to, because I don't see anyone, by the way, taking notes, Aaron. Only one thing. Have good manners. Be gracious in your house. Gracious means being graceful to that wonderful man or woman you're married to. The most important person on the face of this earth to you. Thank you. Love you all.
I do have to say, one thing before you leave. I am the oldest, so I do follow rules. And we are on 15 minutes, so. One of the things that I wrote down that I love that she said is that your spouse has the ability to interrupt you at any time. And I thought that was really powerful for me to hear, because so many times I'm on my phone and I get frustrated about my spouse interrupting me on that. Or in the middle of work, or in the middle of doing something else, yet I'm giving her authority to interrupt me at any point. So that was my amazing takeaway, so thank you, Janette. Let's give her one last round of applause. I thought we're fun here at Centerpoint. I thought we'd do something kind of fun before I have our next speaker come on up. I want to see who's been married the longest. So what do we got? Do we have anybody that's been married 5 years? Who's been married for 5 years? 5 years in this place. All right, 10 years. Where are my 10-year people? All right, my 15 year. All right, my 20 years. My 25 years. We got 30. 28. Now I'm not trying to get you in trouble, guys. 28. 27. All right, well done. Tim and Chris, who's coming on up. That's meant to be. All right. And then I thought we'd do, so you got a little prize for you. And I thought we'd do one more. How many kisses have you given your spouse today? 2 kisses at some point today. I'm on this one. I didn't even know I was doing this one, or otherwise I would have prepared. 4 kisses? 6 kisses? No, just getting dirty. No, 5 kisses? All right, we'll do Randall and Heather in the back there. We got some little prizes for you. 5 kisses. Nice, nice. Anyways, I'm going to have Tim and Chris. They're going to come on up. They're going to be our next speakers, and they're going to be speaking on alignment. So I just want to explain the index cards to you as they're coming on up and we're getting things set. Is for the index cards, at any point you can ask a question about maybe what someone mentioned, or just a question in general that prompts into your head as far as a question about marriage or something you've been wanting to ask or just would love input on. So you can write that on the index card. There'll be a bin at the back table, and then after Tim and Chris, we'll take about a 2 or 3 minute break where you can grab some cookies, some more coffee, and then we'll get set for our panel after that. So if you guys want to grab those stools, yeah, that'd be amazing. Let's hear it for Tim and Chris DeMaster. Good last name.
I am Chris, and this is my husband, Tim, and you just found out that we've been married the longest in the room, I guess, or almost. I almost
have to give her a kiss right away, though, because I was be like, 1,
We haven't done very well with that today. I think one thing that people often assume about us when they first meet us, or especially maybe even in this setting, is they think that we have and have had marriage all figured out for most of our life. And I'm here to tell you quite honestly, that is not the case. We have not had it all figured out, and it has not always been easy, but we have always been very committed to our marriage. We were high school sweethearts. We dated on and off through most of our high school years. We were pretty serious as we graduated, and then Tim left for college. I stayed here in Fond du Lac, went to school here, and a few months later I found out I was pregnant. And as we figured out how to be young parents living in different cities in 1990, when that was still a pretty taboo situation, I think we experienced a lot of hurts and frustration as we tried to figure out if we were meant to be together. We were way too young, we were way too immature to even consider being married, and yet we had a really special relationship, and now we have this child. And so, you know, fast forward a few years later, as things progressed and worked out, we ended up getting married, which is awesome news. And but I think sometimes people see us as the happy couple today with a happy family, and they don't necessarily know that there was a lot of hurts that happened initially. We came up with the concept or the wording that we use of alignment, or we use the term misalignment, and we use it to kind of describe marriage and how marriage has been for us for the 27 years we've been together. I think of it kind of like this. A number of years ago, I hurt my back pretty bad, and I could barely walk. I was like crawling from place to place just to move. And so I'd go to the doctor, I'd go to the chiropractor, and they'd say, like, describe the pain. And I'd say, like, well, when I stand up, I stretch all my muscles and I feel great. But the minute I go to sit down, it's like all my muscles try to shove into the wrong area. They're not, like, aligned where they're supposed to be. And all of my muscles seize up, and it just caused so much pain for me. And the doctors use the term, well, you're not aligned or you're misaligned. And I guess when we kind of think about marriage and where we've been, there's been occasions in our life when we've been aligned and it's all feels great, and we've been misaligned and it doesn't feel so good.
Yeah, and I would say that for myself, when I think of alignment, I always think of it from like a car's perspective, and how when you drive a brand new car, you get rolling, it feels so good. You know, you don't even have to have your hands on the wheel practically. You're just going straight down the way all the time, and that's how your marriage feels when it's aligned. The opposite side is when it's not aligned, you start hitting a couple curbs, which life has a lot of curbs. You run into it, you can barely take your hands off of the wheel. And when you do, you got to grip on it really tight. And you feel like everything comes at you really fast. And that's what we've seen over the years with us, that when we get misaligned, we're not on the same page, life comes at you really fast. And there's a lot of bumps. And honestly, our marriage is no different than taking your car to a mechanic. Sometimes that mechanic has to be you, and you have to do some self-mechanic work. And I think we've always said that marriage it requires work, just like a car would.
So I think, you know, like shortly after we were married, and we were obviously very in love, we had this future, this aspect, this vision of what we were going to be. We have this family. Aaron was 3 years old at the time that we got married. He was the ring bearer in our wedding. Bribe me and we'll get some pictures for you. And so, you know, here we get married, but all of a sudden life became so fast and so chaotic so quickly. So here we're this new young couple who just got married with a child already, trying to figure out life balance and things like that. And in the first 5 years, we moved 2 or 3 times. We bought our first house. I started a business. Tim had 2 different jobs that he had at that time. We had a child, and we had our daughter then a few years later. I mean, life just was chaotic. And it seemed like so many things were really good in our life, but it was always about putting out fires for us. it wasn't necessarily about enjoyment of our family or enjoyment of the life we were working to create. We just were constantly putting out fires to survive the next week. And so it just like during that era of our marriage, it was like complete misalignment. And yet we loved each other so deeply. We cared so deeply. But our marriage was not working all that well because our focus was in so many different places. And I think that's kind of when Tim and I kind of realized about this concept of being misaligned. What I thought of as a priority for our marriage was not always what Tim thought of as a priority. What I thought of as a priority for work maybe was a different way he focused on it. And like what Janette said, you are two different people and you're bringing your two different personalities, and we kind of had this concept that we thought we both should agree on everything. And so it's like during this time of figuring out the first 5-10 years of our marriage, we were not aligned because we didn't realize that each other didn't share the same priorities of different goals or values within our household.
So a while back, we were talking to some friends about the concept of, do you have the same fights with them all the time? The same recurring things that come up that over and over again. Of course, people were like, yeah.
Anybody
like,
here have
yeah,
the same
sure.
fight over
Yeah.
and over again? Like, have you had the same fight with your spouse more than 2 or 3 times ever? Okay, good. How about the same fight more than 10 times in your life ever, right?
Correct.
It's like, why do we have the same fight only to like solve the problem, only to have the same fights again and again and again? It's like misalignment.
Correct.
We couldn't figure it out.
Correct. So we had a discussion with them, and there were some things that came up from them that were very common things that we'd have and they have. And those are kind of some things we thought we'd share with you that could be some watch-outs and some things to maybe how to deal with it. So one of the things that came up was the balance of immediate and extended family time, along with just like your marriage time. We love our family. We love hanging out with our family, whether some of our families here tonight, we all that stuff. But we are more important than the rest of our family. And prioritizing that can be really difficult sometimes. And we've ran into lots of different things over the years where it's been a challenge, and we had to make some tough decisions and say no quite often. And it was really difficult because it'd be like, why wouldn't you want to come to this? It wasn't the right time for us, and we prioritized that, which was difficult, but it was definitely the best choice for us. So that's really
But
a
it was a
challenge.
reoccurring fight
Correct.
we had often.
Correct.
How to use that extra time.
Yep. Another one that came up was finances. I'm sure this can be a hot one for lots of couples. And honestly, it was for us at times earlier on in our marriage. Honestly, for us, the best way for us to kind of like solve that issue was once we came to a firm understanding of kind of like what we value as far as expenses go. And honestly, you all have with your spouse or whoever you have feelings for what you think is okay to spend on this, and they might have a completely different idea what that is, and there probably has to be some, compromise between, or at least an understanding of like, okay, that's really important, and that's why it's expensive, or whatever it would be. But we figured out, once we could figure out a value on things, and we put God first in our finances, that was the game changer for us. Once we put God first in our finances, we started tithing. It was such a big factor for us because it changed our outlook on money. And it allowed us to have a really real conversation about that. And the next one would be outside activity time. I guarantee you this is probably a challenge for everybody. I like stuff that Chris doesn't. And that's cool. You don't have to do everything together. I like to golf. Chris hates golfing. I actually like to golf a lot. She doesn't like it when I golf a lot. So it can be a challenge. And it has been over the years. But when we're honest about it, something like Janette said earlier, just be honest about that in a different way that you talk about it. And get it and understand, like, one of the things, I'll just say this, and this isn't part of it, so I might throw you off a little bit. But I was going to say, like, one of the things that Chris will say to me about if I'm doing different things, because I'll go on a few golf trips or I'll do some different things in time, and it's something that I really enjoy. She said, well, when you're doing that, remember that you're not doing something with me. And it's like one thing to do like a couple hours, it's another thing to do like a week or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
And I would say that because I would say make sure that if you make this something that you're going to do, make it worth it to you, because you're choosing that, which is fine. That's okay if you choose that, but make sure it's worth the choice, because that means you're not choosing to spend time with me. And that's okay. You just have to figure it out.
And it's just something, I think, just get it out there and talk about it, because otherwise it's going to be a problem.
I would say, like, for me, what I would say one of our really difficult reoccurring arguments was just about roles within our household. Who was going to do what role? I mean, we both had really different modeling behaviors from our family, from our parents. And so it just looked different as a woman in our household, because I didn't know what was expected of me and what I was choosing to do, what I was expected to do. And I think Tim often felt the same way. Like, we just didn't always know what each other could expect from. I think some of the other things that our friends that we had this discussion with, their reoccurring arguments were sex was a huge one for a lot of our friends, parenting, different styles of parenting, and then just boundaries of time and how to use time, kind of like what we mentioned.
And what could be some potential things, I guess, for you, we talked about, that could cause misalignment? Some of it's modeling and background. And Janette alluded to this earlier. I was like, Janette, you're stealing all my stuff. But this was, she mentioned that you are unique. Your relationship with your spouse is unique. I wrote down, like, you're not your parents, you're not your friends, you're not the couple down the street, you're not the couple that you see on TV. You are you, and your relationship is unique, and everything that happens in your world is not the same as somebody else's.
It's really a big one for Tim to mention, because we were 19 years old when we had our first child. So we didn't fit in with anybody ever in the first 25 years of our life together, basically. It was like when we had kids, people our age didn't have kids. And then the people who did have kids our age, they weren't even close to the same life place that we were at. We just never quite fit in. So it was hard for us to even look at other people, because we weren't modeling the same type of thing.
And another one, to piggyback off of what Janette said earlier, is talking about the priority list. Where do you have your marriage on your priority list, and do you have it at the same spot? What things might jump ahead of this? And this is tough for people, because not only is it activities and other things, it might be your kids, and they can't. And people will often say, I've had discussions with people like, I'm just investing in my kids right now. And you're like, dude, invest in your marriage, man. Or, you know, it is a huge deal, and it's a challenge because people don't see that. And kids move away. Let me tell you, kids move away, and hopefully your spouse is still there when they move away. So it's a pretty big deal.
Aaron, are you giving us the 2-minute warning? Okay, so I think we'll just...
It's okay, we only got like 10 minutes left. We should be good.
We'll just skip ahead
Yes.
right to about here. I think just skipping ahead, Tim and I both wrote down a couple pieces of advice that we thought, if you just came up to us and asked us, you know, what is a couple pieces of advice you'd give to for a strong marriage, I wrote down my two. The first one is give your spouse time when they come home at the end of the day. Sometimes, like for me, I would have all of these things I'd want to make sure I could discuss with Tim. Oh, and I have to talk about this, and I'm upset about this, and we need to hash out this situation. And what I realized is, just because I was ready to have the deep, serious, intense conversations didn't mean he was. So give him time to come home, unwind, get in a good position, and then when things lighten up a little bit, we can have that discussion. The second piece of advice I would give you is go for walks. I know this sounds so ridiculous for advice, but early in our marriage, we realized that when we had intense conversations to have, or arguments, fights, and we would get like this, Tim's facial expressions are so intense, and I'm a little bit of a confrontational person. So everything I would say, I would look at him and I would measure his response based on what his face did. And it was really unfair of me, and it was a little unfair for him, because in some ways he would gauge my assertiveness on how intense the conversation was. But what we learned was, when we went for a walk together, instead of being face to face, we were side by side. And we could have more honest conversations being side by side because we gave each other a minute to understand what we were saying without having to read the facial expression or to read the response or the coil or things like that. And then my last piece of advice is forgiveness. Have places of forgiveness in your life, even on really tough issues. When I look back to when we first were together and then we had a lot of serious problems when we first found out we were pregnant, I am so glad that God gave us each a grace of forgiveness for each other, because we would have missed out on 27 amazing years together and a family and all that came with it. And it's like, if I would have held on to those hurts for too long, I would have missed out on this marriage here. And so everyone's issues are big and tough and hard, and I get that. Just pray that God will give you a heart of forgiveness.
3 bullet points, and then you can throw me off stage, Aaron. Which wouldn't be nice to do to your dad. All right. First one would be, don't stay mad. It's okay to be mad. Everybody gets mad. Everybody gets angry sometimes. It's okay to be controlled anger and be kind of upset. Don't stay mad and hold a grudge. There's no value in it whatsoever. You will find no value. It will not make you feel better, even if you think it will. Second one would be, have fun together. You want to get realigned? Don't do something you both hate. How about that? That's a really good thought. Do something you both like. Everybody has stuff. Every single person here has things they really enjoy. Find that and do it. Smile, have fun. That's going to put you in the right mindset to get back aligned. And the last one would be, just be willing to change because you love that other person. Love does not insist on its own way. It's the biggest thing. You love that person. You should want it to be great. And that's about it. That's all we got.
Thanks.
Throwing you off stage would actually be kind of fun.
I saw it in your eyes.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a 2-minute break, give you a chance to fill out one of those index cards. You can put it in the bins in the back or up in front if you would like. It's kind of scary coming up to the front, I get that. But if you want to fill out a card and put it in the back there, and then I do also have some other questions too, but we'll have our panel with Jason and Jeri Loewe, Janette Stone, and Tim and Chris starting in 2 minutes. Grab some more snacks. I don't want to leave with any cookies or coffee. So take those 2 minutes, and then we'll reconvene here.
Last night
their panel. You met Tim and Chris DeMaster. You met Janette Stone. And then, do you guys want to introduce yourself? Well done. If you've been coming to Centerpoint or been a part of Centerpoint, Jason and Jeri Loewe, they shared their faith story about a month or so ago, and a big part of it was marriage. A lot of people connected with them in their story. So this is something that you could also go back, watch their testimony or their faith story. But they have some really great insight when it comes to marriage. And I think each person on stage is very different. They have different marriages and approach things differently, which I think makes this a very great panel. So they might say things that we disagree on. And my hope is that we can kind of just keep some conversation going so that you can find something that you can connect with and learn and grow from in your own marriage. All right, so let's start with this question. How do you resolve your fights? Like, you're fighting. How do you get past it being this tense moment and resolving it?
Am I on? Okay. We're very different when it comes to arguments and resolving our arguments. So one thing that is, I have to talk it out. Tim kind of wants to move forward, okay, I get it, and I'm sorry, and I'm sorry too, but I need to talk through the details of it, because in my mind, I think I just need to process why I feel the way I feel. And so I would say on our biggest arguments, we can get past it. We have gotten past it, but I need to dissect it. And that isn't always the healthiest way, but for me, and I think you've learned too, that just let me get it out.
I'd like it to be over in 1 minute, and then it'd be good.
I think a lot of that, though, is the difference between male and female, which I didn't bring up, of course, because I couldn't bring up everything because I only had 15 minutes. But the difference between a female and a male, and the difference between personalities. Some people do not do conflict well, and to know if your spouse does not, and be understanding about that. To be able to say, don't ever say you're supposed to. No, there's no supposed to in marriage. You're supposed to be faithful. Let that be the number one thing. But so you have to be understanding about who that person is, and some people don't do conflict well. I am not a believer in don't go to bed mad. I think it's okay to go to bed with unresolved conflict.
Sure.
It gives you time and to settle down and to see things more clearly.
One thing I'd like to add is early on in our marriage, I was kind of a cave dweller when it came to arguments. I would just go right to the cave and not want to deal with it, and that caused a lot of grief and a lot of add-on hurt, because Jeri wanted to talk about things and I just didn't want to. And I would strongly recommend husbands and guys to not go that far into the cave, because it doesn't help. And I've learned over time, take a little time maybe and process it, but then talk with her and get to the root of the problem and talk about it.
Great. What would you say you fight about the most? What's a common fight that revolves in your life?
I would say that some of our reoccurring fights have to do with our kids and different situations on how to handle them.
Yeah, I think, Janette hit on this, and so did Tim and Chris. In your marriage, the priorities, God first, your spouse second, and then your children should be, right under your spouse. I think that's the proper way to keep everything in its right place. And it's hard as a parent because, your kids, you love them and you want to do everything for them. And I think in today's day and age, there's so much pressure to, put your kids first all the time. And especially, for us, it was always youth sports and how much of a part of our life that was. And, making that a priority and not making us a priority caused some difficulties.
Yeah. I would say like for us, like it's usually time and like where time's being spent, and a big part of how you flush that out, or how, at least how we have, is communicating. It's talking, but I would say a lot of people would say that's what they fight about the most, even is communicating. So it's like getting to the roots of having that dialogue about all things and having it cleared out. That's been probably the thing that's helped us probably the most. What is a God-honoring marriage in your opinion? Like, what is something that you'd say is God-honoring?
To me, honoring the other person, to honor them, they are worthy, and that they know that. There's nothing like having that sense of being honored, and you can give that to your spouse. Bill Stone gets my best. I cover for him. I would never say anything bad about Bill in a group, and many people do. They will use a group to dump on their husband or wife, which is, well, it's ridiculous. So I think honor.
I think that's true too. I was going to say support. I was going to say, and by support, I meant I feel like you always have to have your spouse's back, and even if you maybe don't always agree with what's going on, you still have to be that person. It's what you said is totally accurate, Janette. I do hear people talk poorly about their spouses and different things at times, and it's uncomfortable for me. So I would agree with that too. That's how you treat your spouse is God honoring.
Okay. All right, let's spice it up a little bit. How do you navigate sex when one wants it more, one wants it less? You guys can't answer. Just kidding, just kidding.
Again, there's a difference in people. You're married to someone different than you, and so there is going to be a difference in who one wanting more sex than the other. But there's a difference between Aaron and being affectionate. Women love affection. They love it. I can't tell you how often a woman will say that to me. The man is not affectionate. Put your arm on her. Rub her back. The affection will lead you to the bedroom. Without affection, there will not be good sex. Guarantee it. So truly, how frequent it is, I think I could correlate how affectionate is in the family.
Anybody else?
I think that, this is a place where you just really need to learn each other and communicate about it. Jason will say, I guess we're going to have to do some talking. So, there's compromise over the years.
She likes it when I talk. It helps the process. A little extra talk.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah.
I cover your ears, Aaron. I will add one part of the sex equation. I think different generations of people view sex differently, and of course, men and women can view it differently. But I have been with groups of women who have openly and jokingly, but there's always that hint of truth and sarcasm, like, oh, I hate sex, or this or that. And I find something really sad about that, because that's something that's really special that only your husband gets from you. And so it's like, if you have an area that's a struggle for you in that regard, really maybe do something to help figure that out, because it's a really important component of marriage. And I think sometimes people think that if they don't know how to be comfortable with it, that it's something that they can just ignore, and eventually the intensity of it all will die down. I think it's really important, especially I'm going to speak on behalf of women, that you really try to figure out what maybe makes you feel uncomfortable about it, and what you could do to help communicate what would help you in that regard.
what is good about sex and early in the marriage is wonderful. I mean, it's just great. Uh, it gives you that closeness while you're working other things out. Truly, God had such a great plan. There is a wonderful book called The Act of Marriage. And again, I don't know the author, but I'm a youngest child, so I don't have details. So The Act of Marriage is a good book to read.
Okay. I heard some really good advice one point about sex as close your ears. It's very enjoyable. You have grandbabies because of that. But anyways, sex starts in the morning with texting or cleaning or, helping around the house. All the things, the little details are the affection. And my wife, her love language is touch. So it's the non-sexual touch. I don't want that touch right now, Aaron. It's the non-sexual touch that leads to what maybe I want is the sex at the end. So, and it starts in the morning. It's an all-day process is what gets us to what I want is my end goal. You hear about my goals a lot. Yeah, anyways. But that was something that has really stuck with me is it's an all-day process. All right, how about this next one? Someone maybe mentioned like different gender roles of like there's some women that work, both people work in the household, men that just work, and there's a comment as in like if someone is only working and someone stays at home and you allow for the person that's working to unwind, how do you figure out a fairness or a chance for the person that's staying at home an opportunity to unwind or vice versa? Like there's this opportunity where it's like you're tired no matter what you're doing, right? And how do you navigate rest and opportunity to be on your own and recover from? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Well, of course, I am 83 years old, so, I've been through many different life stages. I was fortunate enough to be able to stay at home, but we moved 9 different times. Every time a bill was promoted, we had to move. So in a way, I stayed home with our three guys, and I cooked dinner, and I cleaned house, yada, yada, yada. Now, of course, as we have changed, Bill and I have changed, and truly I work in quotation marks. I do quite a bit of counseling. I have my office in the home. And life is simpler. I don't cook like I used to, and I have a robot vacuum cleaner. So life is different, but in today's world, there are no set rules or roles to me for marriage. Truly, as I said, I think I said before, being faithful to each other and honoring each other. Other than that, the scripture does not say one should cook and the other should do whatever they do.
Good.
I think we've never fallen into those at all. We've always done things differently. It's interesting when you're talking about like if somebody's what's the timing. We've never actually faced that where like one of us was working really and things like that. But we have faced we work different times, and because of that, at times one of us will be home for a while, and the other person will then come home. And Chris alluded to it a little bit earlier about nobody when they come home wants to feel attacked. I think that's probably the best way she's trying to put it. You know what I mean? It's like because whatever that day was, you don't go home at the end of a busy day to be more overwhelmed. And I think of like when your kids are little, you're always overwhelmed. So that's just kind of part of life. But you don't need the pile on sometimes too. Now that being said, I think there are people that take advantage of that on the same side too, to be like, I've been working all day or whatever it would be. But I also am not somebody that believes in like gender-related roles. I think and I've always been somebody that is responsible for whatever it is, cooking, cleaning, laundry, etc. I can do that just as easily as I can't cook as well as my wife, but I can try. So give me a grill, I'll be okay. But it's like I think there are things that other people can do, and it doesn't matter if I do it or not. It's my willingness to do it. It really doesn't make any difference whether it actually happens or not. It's my willingness to do it because maybe it does make more sense for her to do that, and that's fine. But it's the willingness to do it.
You had
think
mentioned
I-
having a downtime. Did you? And,
Yep.
and to me, then to be able to say, I just need some downtime. I get snagged on thoughts. I'm a thinker, so I'll begin to think, and I don't have it finalized yet if I'm going to give a talk. And so if I'm snagged on a thought, I will tell Bill, I'm thinking. And so he knows enough, that it's okay. So whoever you're married to, if they need downtime, whether it's overhauling a car or in whatever way they do it, to give them that freedom.
Yeah.
I want, every marriage I want Bill to do more of what he loves to do because he's married to Janette Stone. Bill is a fly fisherman. So he takes all the grandsons and the sons to Yellowstone, to Missouri, wherever, to fly fish. He does more of that because he's married to me, not less. And if I could say one thing about a marriage that I see, that especially females tend to feel jealous of time that men spend doing what they love doing. Why would you want to have them do less of what they love doing? And that was a little mini talk. Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, no worries. All right, I got 2 more questions, and then we'll kind of slowly wrap up here. So, what's one of the toughest things you've had to get through as a married couple, and how'd you get through it?
I think for us, when we got married, Aaron was 3 years old, and Tim had been away at college. And so even though we were in a dating relationship, we didn't live together before we got married. And so I had solely raised Aaron on my own, of course with Tim's help when he was home on weekends and things like that from school. But when we were first married, I was the sole parent at that time, now navigating having the dad in the home at the same time. And I could get my feelings hurt really quickly because, wait a second, I've been doing this for all this time, and yet his motives were so wonderful. And so, it was just something that we had to figure out how to navigate, because we went from a family structure that looked one way and then completely changed it to a new way of a family structure looking. And then a few years later, adding in another child, that changed the family structure again. And our work hours were very opposite of each other. Tim would work 7 to 4, and I would work noon to 8. And so I would be home in the morning with the kids, and then they would go to a babysitter's in the afternoon, and then Tim would pick them up in the evening. I mean, it was a great situation for our children, but we weren't able to overlap a lot of times until the end of the evening. So we had to figure out how to make this new family dynamic work with all these moving parts. And we navigated it simply through communication. Now, I talked about walking. Back when our kids were really little, we didn't have phones to text. Oh, that would have been awesome. But we had notebooks. We had notebooks filled with notes about life and what each other needed to know when we came home or when you went or whatever. So I'd leave the whole notebook full. And Tim used to leave notebooks full of information. Oh, so-and-so ate at this time, and here's what you need to know. And sometimes he'd hide notes in the refrigerator where we'd have bottles and food for the kids. And it was just, we communicated through notes and notebooks. So even though we navigated this really difficult time, we kind of did it a little bit through humor and a lot through communication.
All right, I have one more question, and then I'll give you each an opportunity to kind of have like a sentence of advice if you'd like to send some people off with something. But the last question is how does faith play a component in your marriage? Like, how does having a relationship with Christ, how does that change things for your marriage or your relationship personally with Him?
I will speak for myself, but I think I speak for probably more than just myself, that I know that I was not able to be a good wife or a good marriage partner until I accepted Christ and I really understood what it meant to love and to be loved. I didn't really have grasp on that, and until that happened, I was just really not a good wife. I was selfish and just really chasing after all the wrong things.
Yeah, I can say the same thing too. I was born again when I was 32 years old, which was many years into our marriage, and I think I'm so thankful today to have God be the center of our marriage, and just being the center of my life as well. It's still difficult, like we said in church, weeks ago when we, gave our faith story. It doesn't make it life any easier, like overall. It's having God in your life. Like there's still challenges, but having God to turn to on everything, every challenge that's thrown at us, and being able to like have our faith, be the grounds for us to work through, difficult things. Which, we were talking a little bit before this started tonight about like, marriage is just is a roller coaster. You have good times and you have bad, and you go through cycles. Like sometimes it's just so fun and so, it's awesome to be married, and other times it's just like, oh, this is just brutal. Why did I marry this person? No, just kidding. But that's just reality. It's a roller coaster. With God, everything's possible.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, so I want to give you a one-sentence opportunity, if you'd like, of advice you'd maybe like to send people off with. Like, is there anything that you would say is really on your heart or prevalent that you think is just important for people to know when it comes to marriage?
I do have something I'd like to share. My parents were divorced about 8 or 9 years ago. So as an adult, my parents went through divorce. And I saw for myself how much it fractured my sense of understanding of faith and love and commitment. And if you're someone that's maybe had gone through something like that, I would say give yourself some grace in that area, and maybe talk to someone, really get some understanding about it. Because as a strong adult who is even a Christian, it fractured my sense of self and my sense of understanding of marriage just from seeing what my parents went through. And so if you're someone that has struggled with that, I would just suggest, if it's something you feel is still prevalent for you, have someone that you could share that with and talk to about it, because it might change the way you view marriage.
I guess one thing I would say is embrace who your spouse is. And what I mean by that is embrace their weirdness. Embrace their eccentric things they do. Embrace the humor that they bring. Embrace the sarcasm that they bring to the... It is the person you chose to spend your life with. And they're not going to be perfect. You're going to think they're crazy sometimes, but just embrace it.
These are long sentences. All right, go ahead.
So true, so true. I think my one sentence is keep it simple, stupid. Most things are not important, truly. Whether you eat dinner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 7, who cares? So most detail, well, of course, a youngest child, most details are not important. So, to live that way, it simplifies your life. And so you have the energy and you have the thankfulness and the thinking that goes toward that spouse. That's what my one sentence.
All right.
Most things are not important.
Great. Loewe, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would just say patience. Love is patient, And one thing that Jeri likes to say, and I don't want to steal this because I don't know what you're going to say.
I'm going to pass to keep us on time.
Well, she always says that love is a decision, and I think loving through the difficult stuff is a decision.
Yeah. All right, let's hear it for our panel. Thank you. I did my best to keep them on time, but I think they were amazing, and I think the stuff they offered is really great. All of them have said that they would love to chat with you if you wanted to ask some more questions or just follow up on anything. Feel free to touch base with any of them afterwards. They'll be sticking around. We have another Centerpoint Voices on the schedule. It's Create, so it's on creativity. It'll be May 16th, so put that on your calendar. We'll have some new speakers, and we'll have a panel again talking about creativity, and we're going to kind of pull from artists all the way up to someone creating a business and working into that as well. So it's going to be a really great night. But thank you for coming tonight. Grab some cookies on your way out and enjoy. See ya.